Well, it is no surprise to anyone that mental health challenges are on the rise. In fact, we've actually moved from mental health challenges being universally problematic to now really a pandemic level scale. So let's start off first with just a quick explanation of anxiety and depression. So when we talk about anxiety, what are some of the symptoms? What are we talking about when we say anxiety? Well, oftentimes it's a stress that's out of proportion to the impact of an event. So it's kind of maybe an overreaction to what is actually going on with the situation or event. Oftentimes it's an inability to set aside a worry or a fear. Maybe it's restlessness, tight and sore muscles, headache, stomach ache, fatigue, sweating, racing thoughts, fear, and insomnia oftentimes. And then with depression, we're talking about a sadness. We're talking oftentimes about hopelessness. Sometimes we feel helpless. It's a change in our activities of things that maybe we used to love to do, and now we're not doing those things anymore. It's changes in our sleep patterns. Maybe it is insomnia, but it could be the other direction where maybe we're sleeping a lot more than we used to. It's trouble concentrating, and it's having a lot less energy than we used to have. So here's a few action steps to consider, and I'd love to say that if you do these things that maybe you won't experience all the challenges that you have been facing, but maybe it won't go away, but maybe there might be some improvements in your life. One is our diet. Obviously, we don't have time to get into all the things that we eat, but what we eat impacts our mental health, and also our water intake. We've actually been learning that dehydration is linked to a greater amount of depression that can happen in us. So how much water we take in is very important. And the final thing is sleep. Good sleep. Yes, the amount of sleep, the quantity of sleep, but also the quality. And I know you might be saying, but I have insomnia or I have trouble falling asleep. But I would encourage you, like we might make a plan for a diet, or we might make a goal at work, or a financial goal, or a family goal, to make a good sleep plan. It almost sounds kind of funny, but making a plan to get good sleep, and we don't have time to get into that today, but it would start with your amount of tech use or your phone use before you go to bed. That is where I would start. And as anxious or thoughts of depression enter our minds, we have to flip the script. I encourage you just to get out of wherever you are, your physical location. If oftentimes you experience it when you're in your bedroom alone, get out, go outside, go get a change of scenery, go exercise, go have a face-to-face conversation with someone. But the key is, even if you're at work and you can't step away for a long period of time, but go get a change of scenery and find a place to just take 10 deep breaths. I know that sounds kind of silly, but taking 10 deep breaths allows the brain just a moment to be able to reset itself. And another question to consider is, how is your margin, or how are your boundaries? Maybe there are things that you should say no to, but you haven't been saying no to. And so it's taking the place of you doing things in your life that you should be doing, but you don't have time for those things because of the things that you haven't said no to. Or how do you recharge? I don't mean just sleep, that's important too, but how do you refuel? How do you do things that are kind of set apart from your day-to-day life to put more fuel in your bucket, right? Maybe it's getting outside, getting out in nature. Maybe it's reading a book, spending an extended time with the Lord, going for a hike, going for a bike ride, learning a new skill. And finally, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. You know, we've come a long ways with mental health being a conversational topic, but there is still a stigma that can be attached to it. But here's the truth. Mental health is really just about the way our brain functions, just like our physical health is the way other organs like our heart and our lungs and our kidneys function. And sometimes, like those other organs, our brain can become imbalanced with the chemicals, getting misregulated. And just like our other organs can become misregulated as well. And those require being under the care of a physician. So I encourage you, if you have had long-standing anxiety or depression, that it may be time to actually see a physician if you've never done that before. We talk a lot about whole person health, as I mentioned a moment ago, not just our spiritual, but our physical and mental and relational health. And the linchpin to whole person health is refusing to live in isolation. The enemy wants to isolate us, because if he can isolate us, then we can really actually take a deep spiral. But when we stay grafted into Christ-centered community, where we give and receive support, where we celebrate on the mountaintops together, and we care for one another in the valleys, and we walk alongside each other, because really at the core of it all, that is how God designed us. And so I encourage you that if you have never found that community, pray and ask God for it. And when the time is right for you, maybe it's finding a church. We'd love for you to join us here at Rejoice, but find your place, find a community, find godly friends, because it's the way God designed us.